Welcome to this week's edition of Flashback Friday, your opportunity to get some good review by listening to episodes from the past that Jason has handpicked to help you today in the present and propel you into the future. Enjoy.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Please note disclaimers at end of show.
Welcome to Creating Wealth with Jason Hartman. During this program, Jason is going to tell you some really exciting things that you probably haven't thought of before, and a new slant on investing. Fresh new approaches to America's best investment that will enable you to create more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine, self-made multi-millionaire who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. He's been a successful investor for 20 years and currently owns properties in 11 states and 17 cities. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to financial freedom. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show. This is episode number 146, and this is your host, Jason Hartman. Thanks for joining me today. I want to talk to you a little bit about what happens after the fall. Our guest today will be talking about that. He's got a book of a similar title that is about picking up opportunities in the real estate bloodbath. And as you know, I'm sure a lot of you were on our forecast call where we forecasted about 35 markets around the country, and there are some markets this year that will appreciate slightly. That's our prediction. Some markets did that last year and the year before, actually, even in the midst of a huge financial crisis. And some markets that will decline dramatically. And we had ROI projections where we did a totally unique, what we call ROI build, looking at the return on investment, not including tax benefits and inflation benefits. And what I mean by inflation benefits is not inflating the value of the property, but the destruction of debt on a property as you pay it back in cheaper dollars. And what do we call that? We call that inflation-induced debt destruction. I know that's a mouthful. Talk about it at your next cocktail party or barbecue or whatever. Inflation-induced debt destruction, another huge hidden benefit of something that most investors don't understand, especially when they're investing in properties. So with that, we had projections going from Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles that are pretty much complete disasters because the ROI build includes three of the multidimensional elements of an income property investment. What does it include? It includes cash flow, it includes appreciation or depreciation, and it includes the benefit of leverage. But remember, that leverage benefit cuts both ways sometimes because if the property is going down in value, it accelerates the decline. As long as you can hold the property through that decline, though, you can mitigate any losses. In fact, you won't experience them at all. Because usually what happens, not always, but many times, in a declining market is that potential home buyers don't buy because they're waiting for a better deal. And so here you see again another element of the multidimensional nature of an income property investment where they will go ahead and they will wait, and that will actually have the effect of strengthening the rental market. So a lot of things to consider here, and I know we talk about them on many shows in the past and will continue to in the future. But before we get into talking about opportunities after the fall, and I believe this book is actually written by the author, it's about a year or two old, so keep that in mind in the context in which he's talking. But a couple of properties to highlight. Here's a cash flowing property in Denver. This is a single family home and it's only $129,000. The cash flow is projected at nearly $1,000 and the return on investment is projected at 22% annually. And the RV ratio is 0.85%. Now the RV ratio is my metric that is the rent to value ratio. So pretty darn good deal. Again, these homes are newer. They're not older, so that's a pretty nice property. Here's another one for you in Katy, Texas. And if you were looking at this, actually, if you were looking at the picture of either of these properties, you would think these are just gorgeous properties, both for different reasons. The Denver property I mentioned is really new and nice and kind of one of those new suburban type looking properties. This Katy property is still newer, but it's got a big, beautiful tree in the front, a big, beautiful shade tree, a big, long driveway and a big giant yard. Again, single-family home. This one's built in 1994, and for us, that's sort of the oldest stuff we really recommend usually. $94,000. This is only $40 per square foot. $40 per square foot. Cash flow is nearly $200 a month on this property. Projected return on investment, 27% annually. And the RV ratio is a whopping 1.37%. So that's pretty darn phenomenal. And join us for our Creating Wealth Bootcamp on January 23rd. There is a special. We extended actually for the next 10 people who register. They get half off, okay? That includes 2 tickets and half off. The promo code you want to use for that is HALF, spelled out. HALF. If you go to jasonhartman.com and you sign up for the Creating Wealth Bootcamp on January 23rd and you're one of the next 10 people and you type in the word HALF in the coupon or promo code box, you will receive a 50% discount. Pretty darn good deal. All right. Masters Weekend, of course, in March. We've got another person signed up for that one today, and this Masters Weekend is going to be awesome. We're going to sprinkle in, we've got one speaker pretty much confirmed now on the Masters Weekend who is going to talk about internet marketing and small or home-based business. And I interviewed her yesterday for a future Creating Wealth show, and it was just a fantastic interview, and it looks like she's going to be speaking at Masters Weekend, so we're not going to be 100% income property, finance, and real estate investing. It's a whole weekend with probably 14 speakers or so this time in March. So we will touch on some of this exciting marketing stuff, one of our new focuses on the Creating Wealth show. All right, that's it for now. Let's go to the interview and talk about what happens after the fall. Here we go. Good morning, everyone.
There's never been a better chance to learn what you need to know to achieve financial independence. And it happens over the course of 2 powerhouse days, every spring and every fall, with a panel of 16 vibrant, intellectually motivated, and, I'll say it, slightly obsessed with real estate experts leading the way. There's a good chance you'll be sad to see it end.
This is the Masters Weekend, a gathering of experts, where we fly in experts from all over the country. We have guests here today from as far away as North Carolina and Colorado, and then we have experts flying in from many states all over the USA.
Probably the most interesting thing that I've learned so far is about the 1031 exchanges. I thought that was an excellent presentation, answered questions I didn't really even know I had.
And yes, we are planning to invest with Platinum Properties, and probably in the Go Zone, but perhaps not exclusively. And we were greatly impressed today with the surroundings and the glamour and the style, but also the information.
And Karam and Sarah and all the folks here at Platinum have helped us tremendously. So I think we're on the road to success.
Don't wait to buy real estate, and then wait.
The Masters Weekend is a twice-yearly special event, so don't wait another 6 months to learn the skills that could make you financially independent. Space is limited, so your immediate registration guarantees a seat in the room at Platinum Properties Investor Network with Jason Hartman and our gathering of experts.
Welcome to this week's edition of Flashback Friday, your opportunity to get some good review by listening to episodes from the past that Jason has handpicked to help you today in the present and propel you into the future. Enjoy.
It's my pleasure to welcome Steve Bergsman to the show today. He is out with his latest book entitled After the Fall, Opportunities and Strategies for Real Estate Investing in the Coming Decade. And Steve comes to us today from Mesa, Arizona. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your take on some of the different markets in terms of product type. When we talk about real estate investments, we've got office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and then more traditional residential, single family, and fourplexes and duplexes and condos and so forth. What is your take on these broader markets, and then we'll kind of explore geographical opportunities as well?
The main product sector that people look at in commercial real estate is office, and as I was researching this book, which now I think I began in 2008, the book came out in March, April of this year, there was already a divergence in the investment plans of people in office, and the investors who were still buying at 2008, they were beginning to fade, but those people who were still buying were buying in just the primary cities, say New York or Washington, D.C., and these were cities where there were difficulties to build new buildings. So they were staying away from other A markets that were pretty wide open, such as Phoenix, and they were definitely staying away from secondary markets. But I noticed as I was doing that things were beginning to fall apart. And I made a comment at the end of that chapter that if debt is coming due, investors have a problem. There is no access to new equity, and those loans will go into default. There will be blood. And as it turned out, that's exactly what is happening. And in fact, we really aren't even seeing the pain yet in the office market. I think things will get much worse before they get better.
Just for the record, I want to say to the listeners, I couldn't agree with you more. I think many areas of commercial real estate are in serious trouble. They lag residential by about 2 years, and office and retail, I would say particularly, are the biggest spots of pain. And I think you'd mirror those thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to throw one other thing in. When I was writing my book, I'd have these main chapter headings such as office or industrial, and then I'd drill down a little bit into some quirky little sector of that market. And in office, one of the sectors that was really growing for the last 20 years was the office condominium. I don't know, Jason, if you run across them where you are.
I know you have a lot of them in Arizona. We have a few out here in California, but it really seems to have caught on and big in certain markets. And I remember driving around Phoenix in 2004 looking at residential properties, and it seemed like every other corner had an office condo sign on it. A lot of the developers were really promoting that. And I never thought that was a good deal, by the way. I always thought it was far too expensive. But what was your take on it?
You're right. Phoenix was sort of the epicenter of the office condo market, but it was big in other areas in the Southwest. In particular, it was very big in the Atlanta area, and it was even creeping up into some of the big cities. Chicago started to do some office condominiums. But your thoughts were probably right on this. This is a good market for a small business owner, and it's been a particularly good market for medical offices. They go into these office condominiums. But as yet, it's such a new product, there's no, we can't get a bead on whether there is any appreciation if you invest in an office condominium. So it's too new to see if there's any appreciation. I particularly don't think we'll see any, at least for another decade, if you're an investor in these things. And there are some quirky problems to it as well. For example, most people who want an office condominium, they won't buy a used one. They will only buy a new one. So if you want to sell, it's a tougher market to go.
There's just no good resale market for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think the office market in any form is really going to be too good for quite a while. What else is going on in terms of some of the other product types?
Sure. Industrial had over the last 10, 15 years, industrial was really an important product because all the manufacturers were gearing up for global sales, and when you do global sales, you got to get on the supply chain. And they were building these massive 1 million square feet of industrial space for a great, quick, fantastic distribution of product. So there was a lot of new building of industrial product out there, and this was really to get coordinated on the global supply chain. Obviously, with the recession, which is international, everybody's plans have been upset, and there's a lot of big buildings out there, big industrial buildings that are empty, and we're seeing a little bit of pain in the industrial sector. When we say pain in the industrial sector, we're talking at 12% vacancy. You see pain in the office sector, that's 20% vacancy. So it's a lower vacancy rate, but you still have the same amount of pain. And the other problem is to get on the global supply chain. A lot of companies retail companies, they were reorienting their distribution lines as well. And of course, in this recession, people aren't buying anymore, so they're cutting back on their plans. So industrial has a lot of empty space out there. I suppose if the global recession ends anytime in the next year or two, it'll take about another year or two to get up and running and start absorbing some of these empty spaces. So industrial probably has another year or two of pain, and then it'll flatten out. So that's industrial.
How about retail?
Retail has been a real disaster. And I don't even know where to go on retail because there's almost nothing good to say about it. But one of the chief problems in retail was that a lot of new retail was built to follow these new communities that were built way out on the exurbs of places like Phoenix or Atlanta or even some of the bigger cities that still had space like Chicago. So these new communities were planned way out, and the retailers wanted to get in on the ground floor, and they started building to coordinate with these new communities. Well, in 2007, we had the subprime blowout, building stopped, and a lot of these communities, I think, will become ghost towns, and these retail plazas built way out will be ghost towns as well.
I think there was just a massive oversupply in the retail market. I mean, financing was so easy to come by for developers that they just built and built and built, and there were really never enough customers. There was the supply-demand imbalance is beyond bad in retail.
About the only place that I would invest in retail, and I'd have to look at it carefully, is an underappreciated center closer in towards the city as opposed to further out towards the burbs, because there's going to be a change in the way people think, and there's going to be more movement closer into the cities as opposed to farther away. Remember about a year ago when gas prices hit ridiculous heights, that was a kind of a tipping point for people, and they realized that the cost of commutation had to be taken into consideration where they bought a home. So I think there's going to be more pressure to move closer in, and then some of those spaces, underperforming spaces closer in, will probably be a better investment.
Okay, good. So speaking of housing, let's talk about one of the brighter spots, and it's got its share of problems, and it depends geographically because, of course, we both know that all real estate is local. But one of the brighter spots in the market is housing. The population is increasing, and housing has been beat to a pulp, and it was sort of the first to go into the downturn, and people still need a roof over their head and a place to live. They may not need an office. They may work out of the house. The manufacturing can get outsourced to China. The call centers can go to India. There goes the office space. There goes the industrial. The retail, to some extent, is outsourced to the internet and also oversupplied, but people still need a place to live. What about the multifamily market?
Well, an odd thing happened to the multifamily market. When we had all this problem in the single-family home market, there was great expectation that, people are going to be moving out of their single-family homes and they're going to have to go into apartments. And that just didn't happen. And it didn't happen for two reasons, because even if you lost your home, you probably found a better deal renting a single-family home than getting an apartment. And secondly, the recession was so bad that individuals couldn't afford to even rent an apartment, and they had to double up or quadruple up or even sometimes move in with parents. So multifamily has unexpectedly taken it on the chin.
I'd like to throw in one more factor, if
Sure.
I may. It's another mitigating factor that's causing that multifamily a problem, and we've noticed it. As the crisis began, we saw the rental market actually improve, and then we saw it soften. And we're thinking, why is this happening? Because the rental market should be strengthening as people are losing their homes and need to go rent something. They're getting kicked out. But the political pressure of kicking people out of their homes was so great that the mantra between Bush and then Obama became, let's keep people in their homes. And there was a lot of pressure on lenders to modify loans, to do workouts, and to go slow with foreclosures. And a lot of these people really still are in homes they can't afford, but they haven't really been pushed into the rental market yet. And if they have, many times they rented a single family, not a multifamily. That's true. But I just wanted to kind of throw in that one other issue that we've seen out there.
Well, there is some good things going on with multifamily. Now, the amount of multifamily, what they consider the replacement of old multifamily with new multifamily, there is generally a need for about 170,000 new rental units a year. But all the big builders have been winding down whatever building they were doing, and now we're down to about 100,000 units a year. So we're actually below sort of the replacement number of units. So the general thinking is that by 2013, there's going to be a real demand for apartments, and this once again will become a landlord's market. So, you think in 2012, 2013, but we're almost done with 2009. That's not very far away. So if you're a long-range or mid-range investor, I like multifamily, and I think they're right. I think this is going to become a landlord's market again in just a couple of years.
I agree with you very much so. What do you think, though, about the single-family market? I mean, some people are calling a bottom. I would say we are at a bottom in some markets, but other markets still have some more pain ahead, and it just depends where you're looking at in terms of geographical factors. What do you think?
Well, two things. I think many cities, including some of the places that have been really terrible, such as Phoenix, have hit bottom in terms of pricing declines. So I think we've hit bottom here in the Phoenix area, and other places across the United States have as well. However, I have this theory, I call it the Bergsman theory, that when we hit the downturn in the real estate cycle, that it takes about 6 years to swing around. And that includes 3 years to hit the bottom. So if you figure we may have peaked in residential housing somewhere around 2006, then we've been on a 3-year decline, and that takes us to this year, 2009. Then it takes us another 3 years just to get back to historical appreciation levels. So what's an historical appreciation level? But in most markets, that's just 1% or 2% appreciation. So we've been at 3 years coming down. We're going to be 3 years coming back just to get to 1% to 2% appreciation. So we're in the middle of sort of a U, not a V, a U downturn. So we're in the middle of that, the bottom of that U on the downturn.
Good way to look at it is the U. So I asked you when we talked about that, I didn't have to point it out because you thought of it the way everybody does. We think of prices, the price of buying a house. What about the rental market in the private renter world, the investor who owns a couple of single-family homes and rents them out? Of course, this is much harder to chart because there aren't statistics that are as good as there are for the large institutional apartments and so forth. And of course, then we have to look at geographical things as well. But do you see an improvement in the rental market for individually private rental properties?
It's funny that you asked that question because I write a column for Inman News, and I was working on this column about home rentals, and I got into a debate with one of my sources. The source said that this is still a good market, and he still recommends to people that they buy and rent. However, my take on it that there is a coming glut in rental housing, and even though you're buying in at very, very cheap rates, so is everybody else. And there's going to be a lot of competition, and even though you're buying in at cheap rates, you may not be able to get the rent that you want to cover whatever mortgage that you have. Now, if you're a cash buyer, that's something else. Then you're fine.
But if you're a cash buyer, you've tied up all that money in the property. I mean, I don't consider that fine. I'd rather have the lender with all the risk, not me.
Oh, I agree with you. I wouldn't put all my money into it either, but it's hard to get financing, so a lot of people are buying with cash.
Right.
So that's my take. I think in a lot of markets, including my home market here in Arizona, I see a coming glut.
In Mesa.
Mesa and
right.
Phoenix in general. Because Mesa is a suburb of Phoenix.
Yeah, so parse that up geographically a little bit. So you see in your hometown, you see a glut of rental housing coming about when?
I see it within the year.
Okay.
I see there's going to be so many properties are turning over through the foreclosure process, and a lot of these are being bought by investors. So if you want to be the investor that buys these homes and rents them out, and you want to own 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of these things, that's fine. But you can't buy that home in a neighborhood where there are 7, 8, 9, 10 other homes for sale because you know those properties are going to be bought by other investors who are going to be doing the same thing as you. You just may have to move up to a little different neighborhood where there's only one other home for sale that may be bought by an investor, and there'll be less competition. Of course, you may have to pay more to get in at that moment, but you won't have that competition factor.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, Steve, because we used to recommend the Arizona market about 4 years ago, I guess it was, and then we closed it because there was just too much appreciation and the bubble, it was just getting too frothy there, so we stopped recommending that market to our investors, and then we just recently opened it again. But let me tell you something that we recognized in 2004, 2005 timeframe. Everybody from California, it seems, went out and they bought a rental property or two in Phoenix. And they were all buying the same thing. Generally speaking, they were buying the 3-bedroom, 2 or 2.5 bath home, the newer subdivision. And at first that seemed like this is the smartest rental property because it has the widest appeal and the widest market of renters. But with everybody putting that same supply on the market, it really became oversupplied. Whereas if people would move up just maybe 10-20% in purchase price, get a slightly nicer home that wouldn't on the face of it seem to make as much sense as a rental, they really had no problem renting their properties because there just weren't so many investors in that part of the market, and there was a lot less supply of rental housing. Is that what you're saying now?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think people just have to rethink what they're doing because the traditional way of thinking just isn't going to work in the near future because of the competition factor. So I'm in total agreement with you.
Yeah, people really have to realize that when it comes to the real estate game, there are so many ways that you need to parse things up. You need to parse them up in terms of product type, in terms of price range within that product type, and of course in terms of geography. That would probably be the most important and most obvious. So there's a lot to consider here. The subtitle of your book is Opportunities and Strategies for Real Estate Investing in the Coming Decade. What are the prime opportunities and strategies? Thank you for listening to the Creating Wealth Show. This is Jason Hartman, your host, and we appreciate you following the show. We have many, many episodes, hundreds of episodes, and some of the older episodes have been archived and placed in our members section, and that applies to this one. So we include a sample that's about 25 minutes long, and then for the rest of the show, you can go to our members section at jasonhartman.com. Many of the other shows are still in their full-length, complete version. However, some of the shows, like this one, are in our members section where you can hear the show in its entirety. And again, you just need to go to jasonhartman.com and you can get the full show there in the members section, plus a whole bunch of other great members benefits and resources, whether it be documents, forms, contracts, articles, other video and audio content. Just a great resource. So be sure to join as a member at jasonhartman.com. And thanks again for listening to the Creating Wealth Show.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company, all rights reserved. For distribution or publication rights and media interviews, please visit www.hartmanmedia.com or email media@hartmanmedia.com. Nothing on this show should be considered specific personal or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and the host is acting on behalf of Platinum Properties Investor Network, Inc. exclusively.